Breaking tonight, the mother of the young person at the centre of the BBC presenter scandal has stood by her claims as lawyers representing the teen dismissed them as total rubbish. She told The Sun, "It's sad, but we stand by our accounts and we hope they get the help they need. We did this to help and the presenter has got into their head. How did they afford a lawyer?" It comes as the stepfather also says that he told the BBC he had screenshots of contact between their child and the star, as well as bank statements detailing huge payments. Joining me to discuss this is the former editor of The Sun newspaper, Kelvin MacKenzie. Kelvin, does The Sun have more than we know?
I suspect they have a lot, but they made, as far as they're concerned, journalistically, they made a shocking error because they could have published a picture, which everybody in the world has seen online, and they could have published the person's name. This was on the Saturday. They chose not to do it. That's probably because of pressure legally that exists around News UK with all the
owners of the Sun.
Yeah, the money that's being spent through the High Court in hacking cases and other cases which involved the former the current chief executive of News UK. By the way, she was cleared, as was everybody else in that particular case. But there is a nervousness there. And they also didn't want to get caught up in the fact that was there a strange smell about this paper, and therefore would advertisers walk away? There were lots of pressures on them, and they chose not to run it. And now they will never run it until potentially an MP. So if an MP says it, in the Commons, fine, right? Everybody will pile in. Outside that, nobody will ever name that person, is my prediction. And secondly, thanks to the person now saying that this actually there was nothing inappropriate happened, nothing unlawful happened. There is never going to be, and there probably never was ever going to be, a legal action involving with the police or the prosecuting authorities taking a view. So that's over. So my bet is that the person actually will be allowed to retire by the BBC, and that will be the end of that.
But what a pantomime if this person is known to the public through social media, and yet it's never mentioned. I mean, that's not good.
Well, there's more than one media in our country. There is the one that everybody embraces because basically it's free. It's called social media. Everybody's on that. That's the way people communicate. And then there is mainstream media. And mainstream media no longer is the source of news in our country. It's an incredible thing. And The Sun finds itself caught in the middle because they've got an online presence and they've got a print presence. And actually, in this particular case, they're not bad journalists. They're hard-working people. The management, though, the management at News UK have something to answer for. They don't know whether they're Arthur or Martha.
No, that's right. And they've approached this story half-cocked in a way, haven't they? They're sort of half in, half out, which, you know, as a veteran of a scoop, that's not how you do it.
No.
You go all in, right?
Look, you might as well be. Are you allowed to be hung for a sheep as a lamb? I'm not sure with any vegan viewers that you have. In fact, I tell you what, this is GB News. There won't be any. You're quite
we're
right.
All right.
Right. OK. So in the old days, when we used to sell 4 or 5 million a day, then we used to go all in and also pay for it when we got that wrong. OK. Now, what happens is that most stories are half pregnant. You know, it's almost there, and they put the story in there, hoping that social media run with it, and then what happens is then they can get behind it, and then they can say, oh, well, I read this on social media, I saw it on Instagram or something. That is the way it's now performed. It's a very strange world that these big, once powerful tabloids, once very commercially successful, that's no longer the case, on the print side anyway. The online case, yes, it's still doing OK. But they are worried constantly, the management. What if we run this kind of story? Will Unilever advertise with us? Will our media buyers, will, I don't know, Vauxhall Cars advertise with us? So they're constantly worrying. Why do they worry? Because in the old days, revenue from circulation was up there, and down there was advertising. Now, circulations have dropped by about 80%. Advertising is what matters, not what the reader thinks. So they worry more about the advertiser than the reader. Then you get what happens on last Saturday.
And we've seen it in America where the press are in the pocket of corporations, the advertisers. That's bad for democracy, isn't it? Because when you were at The Sun, you broke important national interest.
Well, and what used to happen all the time was, for years, Sainsbury's wouldn't advertise in The Sun. Finally, the sales director came out to me, we've done it. They've come back in with some £5 million agreement. Oh, fantastic. 3 days later, we ran a story saying that a member of the Sainsbury family had been booted out of Oxford or somewhere.
Oh,
and do you know what happened? They carted the advertising again. But it didn't matter then, because revenues were coming in on the other side. So these are very difficult areas. So there's never going to be a legal case involving the two sides in all this. You're never going to hear the name, and I feel sorry for the parents because they have a view, they have the love of their offspring, and yet what they see is actual powerful forces appear to be working against them. So even the love of their child, a cocaine crack addict, and they're trying to do the best for that child, they can't get, quotes, justice for that child.
Is the law a red herring? Because ultimately, if this star is an identifiable talent that's linked to the brand, maybe one of the faces of the network, potentially, does that not cause reputational damage anyway? The fact that he's allegedly indulged in an encounter with a teenager, isn't that enough to get him sacked? And isn't that enough to damage the BBC, even if it's within the law?
Definitely damaging the BBC. This whole kind of
it's
thing.
Not exactly appropriate behaviour, is it?
Absolutely, and especially in the role that this particular person has within the BBC.
Right. It's not a weatherman, you're saying? OK. We can't speculate, can we?
We're not... No, I'm sorry. Let's make that clear. We're very sorry for any weather.
It's not Mr Blobby, is it?
It's not
Although I've always thought he was a wrong 'un.
Well, he might be, but I don't know what you mean by wrong.
What's in that suit? No, listen, OK, but do you take my point that maybe it's a red herring, the law side of it?
It's got nothing to do with privacy, got nothing to do with anything. And this is where The Sun made a terrible error. It has everything to do with this person does a very responsible job, is one of the major faces of the BBC. And there is one particular photo that is going round going around the online world, which would mean that person, under no circumstances, could continue to do that job. And they haven't published that photo.
Kelvin, is there evidence that photograph is kosher? I mean, we have Photoshop, you've got deep fake. You know, can we? Are we in a position to?
Well, it's gone from AI to ARS, but. Right.
That's nicely done.
Yeah, I'm here all week.
That's the headline tomorrow.
Yes. So
I just will stress. No, we can't substantiate that any images floating around online are true or authentic, or indeed the names being bandied around. It's important we stress that.
Yeah. I agree with you. In this world we're in right now, and going forward, the trouble with this particular article is that it will create uncertainty around all stories that appear in The Sun or Sun likes.
Now, listen, is it bad news for The Sun as a brand, this story? If they've essentially, It's
bad. It's bad news. It's bad news.
What does it mean for The Sun?
Honestly, they're not in good shape anyway.
This was a chance to really make a few headlines and become relevant again, right?
I don't know about relevant. There's some damn good journalism done there. Yeah. And the trouble is this casts a shadow over it, that even when you've got the goods and you could publish the goods, there's an uncertain note on the trumpet in that company now. And you can see that in Talk TV. You can see it on Times Radio. There's a whole series of things that are going wrong. Not helped, I suspect, by having a CEO who's 92.
Briefly, Kelvin, can't imagine who you're talking about. Can I ask you about... the Beeb itself now going forward as well, reputational damage to the Beeb. But how can they continue the pretense? If the public think that they know who it is, we can't prove it, right? But how can they quietly make this go away? People aren't stupid, are they?
They can't. They're not stupid.
Do you think the person involved has got to do a press conference and fess up?
I very much doubt. In the light of the kind of conversation we're having right now, I cannot see that happening a month or so.
Will that person ever be on television again, like from tonight?
No.
Right, so they will not appear on screen again?
Not appear on screen again, but can, by the way, might even end up, bizarrely, in getting severance.
Right. That person's on the payroll still. They're suspended, but...
Yes, well, when you're suspended, as you're likely to discover in the future...
Correct.
You can continue to be paid.
I'm just praying it's not a weatherman, otherwise that's it. It's game over.
Yeah, it is, yeah. That'll be your final job. So for the BBC, it's very bad news, but it's not as bad news as if that picture had appeared last Saturday morning and the name had appeared. You know, because then they would have had the problem about, well, where is that May 19, communication between the mother? Yeah. And I feel sorry for the parents. The parents appear to have been defeated by the establishment.
Kelvin, I knew it wouldn't be boring. Great to have you in the studio. We'll catch up soon. There you go. The man in the know, former editor of The Sun newspaper, when it sold millions of copies every day.